I'm Carolyn Foster, 69 years old, and tonight I'm sitting in the guest room of my eldest son's house, pretending not to flinch every time someone walks past the door. 2 floors above me, Daisy's voice drifts down the hallway. Too bright, too polished, like everything she says has a price tag on it. The smell of hairspray and pot roast mixes in the air, and the television in the living room is stuck on some game show. No one's really watching. My suitcase is still zipped beside the dresser untouched since Sunday morning when I arrived, and when Harlan asked me to move in, he said it would be good for everyone. What he didn't say was that I'd start to disappear the moment I cross the threshold before I go any further. Let me know where you're listening from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt like you were only welcome when you were useful. I was born in Amarillo and lived most of my life in San Antonio, 34 years, with Pierce Construction as an accountant. I kept the numbers clean and the lights on back when people still balanced their checkbooks by hand. After Lester passed, he was only 52. The kids were 8, 12, and 14, and I didn't have the luxury of falling apart. The mortgage was due. The next week, I took every shift I could, and when Raymond Pierce offered to let me work some days from home, I nearly cried in his office. He didn't have to do that, but he did, and I never forgot my youngest, Frank, lives in Chicago. Now he's quiet, polite, always sends a little money, even when I tell him not to. My middle child, Sybil, is a schoolteacher up in Portland. She's married to a kind man named Dominic, and they've got 2 kids, Oliver and June. They call me on the holidays and sometimes just because. And then there's Harlan. He's the oldest, and the one who's always had a hard edge to him. Even as a boy, he could lie without blinking and charm the truth out of a room if he needed to. After Lester died, we clashed more often than not. Maybe I wasn't patient enough, or maybe he just stopped listening. Daisy came into the picture when he was 26. She's always had a taste for appearances. She works as an administrator at a fitness club, but talks like she's on the board of something important after I retired. I stayed in the house. Lester and I had built. I finally paid it off a year before leaving the firm, and for a while, it felt like peace. Then came the flood. Last October, water soaked the basement and crept up the walls like it was trying to climb into my bed. Insurance helped, but not much, and just when I was thinking about selling my grandmother's silver. Harlan called Mom. "Why don't you come live with us?" he said. It was a favor to me. "The kids miss you, and Daisy's been saying we could all use more time together." I hesitated, but he kept asking, and by the end of the week, I'd rented out my house and moved into their place on the edge of town, with 2 suitcases and a hopeful heart. At first, it wasn't so bad. Daisy greeted me with an awkward smile and showed me to the guest room on the 1st floor. She cleared a spot for me in the fridge, a shelf in the bathroom. Harlan even put his arm around me and said, "Just relax, Mom. No pressure." The first weekend we sat out back under the umbrella, drinking lemonade, and for a second, I thought maybe it would work. Then on the 3rd night, he said, "Mom, we've been meaning to ask, can you start picking up the kids from school and maybe fix dinner a few nights a week?" Of course, I said. Yes, they were giving me a roof and it didn't seem like much to ask, but a few nights turned into every night, and then mornings too, and lunches, and laundry, and vacuuming, and ironing. And by week 4, I was the one unlocking the door for the cable guy and scrubbing the grout in the upstairs bathroom while Daisy was at yoga. The kids started calling me her when I wasn't in the room. Elliot wouldn't look me in the eye, and Nora said I smelled like old books one afternoon I baked a casserole, using my mother's recipe. And Daisy wrinkled her nose before even tasting it. "Ugh, gluten," she said, even though there wasn't any in it. "We'll just order something," she told the kids, as if I wasn't standing right there. I thought maybe Harlan would step in when things got tense, but he didn't. When I bought Elliot a new shirt for a school event, he snapped, "What are you trying to prove? That we can't dress our own son?" and tossed the shirt on the floor without even looking at the tag. I stopped buying anything after that, and when Sybil called, I said everything was fine, and when Frank offered to send more money, I told him no, because I still had my pride, even if it was wearing thin. Then one afternoon, the phone rang while I was making dinner for a family that barely spoke to me anymore. The number looked unfamiliar, and I almost didn't answer. But something told me to pick it up. "Gwendolyn, it's Raymond Pierce. I hadn't heard his voice in 3 years, but I'd know it anywhere I need to see you," he said, "tomorrow morning at 10. "What's this about? It's not something I can explain over the phone." And that was the moment everything began to shift. Raymond's voice stayed with me the rest of the evening. I didn't sleep much that night, kept turning over his words in my mind. By morning, I had already made breakfast for the kids and was out the door before Daisy even poured her coffee. I told them I had a cardiologist appointment, first one that popped into my head. That seemed believable enough, and I didn't owe them any more than that. The city looked different that morning. The sun was already high and the streets shimmered with heat. I rode the elevator up to the 4th floor, trying not to fuss with the old tweed blazer I'd kept all these years. It still fit, but everything around me had changed. The front desk girl barely looked old enough to vote, and the office itself didn't resemble the one I used to know. But when I stepped inside Raymond's new office and saw him standing there thin, grayer than I remembered, I recognized him right away. "Gwendolyn," he said, coming around the desk, "you look exactly the same." He didn't. He walked with a limp and moved like every step was a quiet negotiation with pain. We sat side by side, and he got straight to the point. "Pancreatic cancer. Late stage." His voice was tired but steady. "I've made peace with it," he said. "But I haven't made peace with what's happening to the company." He laid it all out. His CFO, Vernon Gray, had been manipulating the books, creating fake losses, hiding profits, setting himself up to buy the company cheap once Raymond was gone. "I fired him this morning," Raymond said, "but I need someone I trust to fix what he broke." He handed me a folder. 6-month contract, full access, $75,000 a month. I couldn't speak. I hadn't made that kind of money in my entire career. "Raymond," I finally said, "I've been retired for 3 years. I'm out of touch with the new systems. I don't need someone with fancy tech skills." He interrupted. "I need someone with integrity. Someone who knows how the heart of this place works. That's you." He didn't try to sell me on it after that. He just placed the folder in my lap and said, "I hope you'll say yes. But please don't take too long to decide." When I got home, the first thing I saw was Nora on the couch scowling. Daisy stormed into the kitchen before I could say hello. "Where were you?" Nora missed her piano lesson. "I had a doctor's appointment," I said. "I told you this morning." "You could have called," she snapped. "I had to leave work early because of you." I gave some excuse about my phone dying. She rolled her eyes and walked out of the room. That night, Harlan went on about how irresponsible I'd been, how I was taking advantage of their kindness. He slammed his fist on the table and told me if I didn't shape up, I could pack my things. I said nothing, but in my purse, the contract was still there right beneath the grocery list I never finished. When the house quieted down, I sat on the edge of the bed and read every word of that folder. The salary, the benefits, the health insurance, a company car, a bonus on completion. It was all real. And the next morning, after the kids left for school and Harlan and Daisy drove off, I picked up the phone and called Raymond. "I'll take it," I said. He didn't sound surprised. "Good," he replied. "Start tomorrow." I knew right then I couldn't tell my family the truth. Not yet. If they found out, they'd start asking for money. Repairs, a new SUV, tuition for private school. I needed time. So I came up with something simple and believable. I told them the local library was looking for volunteers to help sort books. "Don't let it interfere with your duties here," Harlan warned that night. "Of course not," I said. "I'll be done by 2. I started work at Pierce Construction the next morning, At first, it was overwhelming: new faces, updated systems, a mess of spreadsheets, and old emails to untangle. Some of the younger staff gave me sideways looks. I understood. I was older, out of the loop, maybe even a little out of place. But I got to work. Raymond came in every other day, helping me sort through the backlog. He was slower now, had to rest often, but he was still sharp. "You've got this, Gwendolyn," he told me one afternoon. "You're doing better than I hoped." That meant more to me than I could explain. At home, things got harder. Daisy started making comments about the overcooked rice, the unfolded laundry, the wrinkled shirts. "Maybe spend less time with your books and more time helping the family that took you in," she said with a smirk. Harlan added his share too. "You've been kind of distracted, Mom. Forgot the cheese. Missed a message from my boss. Maybe tone down the library time." The children followed their lead. Nora began rifling through my purse when she thought I wasn't looking. One evening I caught her in the act. "What are you doing?" "Looking for money," she said. "I need a new phone case. You need to ask your parents for that," I told her. She laughed. "Why would I? You don't have anything." I was still holding my bag when Daisy walked in. "If my daughter needs something, you help her," she said. "You live here for free, remember?" She made me hand over $20. It was money I'd saved for a new pair of tights. Later that week, Elliot spilled juice on my favorite blouse, the one I had just taken to the cleaners for an important investor meeting. He grinned when he said, "Oops." Harlan chuckled. "It's just a blouse, Mom. You can buy another. Someday." I didn't respond. But that night, I made a decision. I would save every paycheck. I'd find a place of my own. Maybe talk to a lawyer about my will. I didn't want a single cent of what I earned going to this house once I was gone. Raymond kept checking in. "You look tired," he said one afternoon after a board meeting. "I'm fine," I told him. He looked at me for a moment, then said, "Don't let them break you. You deserve better than that." At home, I stopped trying to be agreeable. I did what I had to do, but I didn't ask for approval anymore. When Daisy asked me to power wash the backyard, I said I didn't know how. When Harlan told me to hem his shirts, I said maybe tomorrow. "You're different," he said one night, frowning. "I have limits," I told him. He looked genuinely confused. "We gave you a place to live. What else do you want?" That was when I understood he didn't see me as a person. Not really. Just someone to manage things so he didn't have to. I started counting the days. Each morning when I left for work, I reminded myself one day closer. Each evening when I returned, I said the same thing again. And one Saturday in July, when my savings had reached the number I was waiting for, something happened that changed everything. Harlan asked me to babysit so he and Daisy could go to a movie. I told them I had a doctor's appointment, and this time, I didn't back down. Harlan stood in the kitchen doorway with a mug in his hand, eyes narrowed. "You're not going to that appointment," he said. "We already talked about this." I said I was, I answered, keeping my voice even. Daisy sat at the table thumbing through her phone. "It's not like you're doing anything important, Carolyn. You can reschedule a checkup. This is family time. The doctor's office scheduled me 2 months ago," I said. "I don't want to wait another 2. Harlan stepped closer, his tone rising. "You live here because we let you. You eat our food, use our water. You owe us some basic cooperation. I cook that food. I clean this house. I drive your kids to school, help them with their homework. I'm not asking for a vacation. I'm going to the doctor. You're being selfish," Daisy added without looking up. "I'm going," I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move. I just said it again. Harlan's hand tightened around his mug. "You really think you get to tell me what you are or aren't doing in my house? This isn't a negotiation." The silence after that felt thick. Even the kids were quiet in the other room. Harlan stared at me for a long time, then suddenly stepped forward and grabbed my arm. "You're not walking out that door. You're hurting me," I said. He didn't let go. "You think you're better than us now? You think you can just ignore everything we've done for you?" Something in me gave way, but it wasn't fear. I pulled my arm free and said the only thing I could think of. "I raised you. I worked 2 jobs after your father died. I paid off a mortgage without a penny of help. I'm not here because I can't take care of myself. I'm here because you asked me." Daisy looked up then. The kids stopped pretending not to listen. Harlan's face turned red. He grabbed the mug of hot tea from the table and threw it. It hit me across the chest, searing hot, soaking my blouse. I gasped from the pain, took a step back, but didn't cry out. My skin stung, but I held on to the countertop and steadied myself. "Get out," he said. "You want to act like you're better than us? Then go." No one said a word. Daisy stared at the floor. Nora fiddled with the TV remote. Elliot just stood there, arms crossed. Not one of them came to my side. Not one of them asked if I was okay. "I'll pack my things," I said. I went to the guest room, pulled out the bag I never fully unpacked, and added what few clothes and toiletries I had. I took my documents and the folder Raymond had given me, now slightly worn from weeks of quiet study. I left behind the knit blanket I brought from my old house. I didn't want anything that smelled like this place. As I passed the kitchen again, I heard Daisy mutter, "Maybe you didn't have to throw the tea." "She brought it on herself," Harlan said. "Let's see how she manages now." Outside, the sun was high and bright. I walked down the driveway with my bag in hand. The street looked the same, children playing 2 doors down, someone watering hydrangeas, but the weight on my shoulders was gone. At the end of the block, I sat on a bench and opened my phone. I called a taxi. Then I looked up hotels near the office. The Riverview had rooms available. I booked one. By the time I checked in, my blouse had dried stiff against my skin. The manager gave me a first aid kit, and I took a long shower to rinse away the burn. It wasn't serious, but it would leave a mark. I folded the clothes I had and set them on the armchair. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the quiet stillness of the room. I called Raymond. He answered on the second ring. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I'm out," I said. I left. He didn't ask for details, but I gave them anyway. I kept my voice steady, described what had happened, and when I was done, there was a pause. "I'll make a call," he said. "You'll have a place of your own by tomorrow." After I hung up, I called Sybil. I told her the truth. About everything. About the burns. About the tea. About what had been happening since I moved in. She listened, her voice sharp with concern. "Do you want to come here, Mom? You don't have to stay in Texas." "No, sweetheart. I'm all right. I've got a job. I've got options." She was quiet, then said, "A job I've been working for Raymond, Chief Financial Officer, $75,000 a month." There was another pause. Then she laughed, not from disbelief, but from something like joy. "Mom," she said, "that's incredible." I called Frank next. He wasn't one for big reactions, but I could hear the way his voice tightened when I told him what happened. He asked if I needed help. I told him no. He said, "All right, but call if that changes." The next morning, Raymond's friend Marcus met me at a coffee shop near the river. He showed me a listing for an apartment in River Heights gated community, 2 bedrooms, view of the water. We visited the property that afternoon. The floors were polished wood, the kitchen full of light. I walked through both bedrooms, ran my hand over the windowsill, and nodded. "I'll take it." That evening, I moved in with just my bag and a folded sheet of paper confirming the lease. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't press down on you, but opens up space. At work, I told Raymond I'd settled in. He handed me a new folder with the next round of reports. "You look rested," he said. "I am," I replied, and over the next 2 weeks I began to build something. A new home, a new rhythm. In the mornings, I made coffee and watched the water outside my window. In the evenings, I shopped for dishes and towels and a good desk chair. I paid in full. I used my own money. I didn't hear from Harlan, but I knew that wouldn't last. The first few weeks in the new apartment moved quietly. I fell into a rhythm: early mornings with coffee by the window, long hours at the office, quiet evenings with the lamp on low and the hum of the dishwasher in the background. I hadn't lived alone in over a decade, but the silence never felt heavy. I unpacked slowly, one box at a time, folding sweaters into neat drawers, lining up my old books along the built-in shelf in the hallway. Each small act felt like a kind of return, though I couldn't quite say to what. At the office, the mood had shifted. Word had spread about the internal audit. Some whispered when I passed. Others looked relieved. I didn't ask questions. I kept my head down and focused on the numbers. Raymond came in less often now, but when he did, we always sat in the corner office with the blinds drawn. He'd lost weight. His skin looked thinner, but his eyes were the same. "You're keeping this place steady," he said one day, setting down a cup of tea he hadn't touched. "If I go before this mess is cleaned up, I need to know it's in the right hands." I didn't respond right away. Then I said, "You've got time." He nodded once, but I could tell he didn't believe it. That Friday I stayed late. The building emptied around me, and the light outside softened to that pale gold that only shows up at the end of a clear day. I was reviewing payroll ledgers when I noticed a name I hadn't expected to see: Harlan Landry. I stared at it for a long moment. There it was again, on a different document: reimbursement request, project, consultant hours, site inspection reports. It didn't make sense. Harlan had never worked for Pierce Construction, at least not officially. I printed the file and brought it to Raymond the next morning. He looked it over, flipping pages slowly. "That's Vernon's doing," he said at last. After I got sick, Vernon started issuing short-term contracts to people he said were external consultants. I never saw this name. "Harlan's my son," I said. "My eldest." Raymond looked at me, then back at the file. Well, he was being paid $10,000 a month for 8 months, all through Vernon's discretionary fund. I'd bet good money it never reached our books cleanly. He sat back in his chair, folded his hands. "Want me to call him in?" "No," I said. "Not yet." I took the file home and laid it out across the table in my small dining area. I went line by line, tracking where the money had gone: real estate lunches, weekend site visits that didn't match any known project, thousands in supplies for non-existent builds. I stayed up late that night, piecing together the trail. By dawn, it was clear. Harlan had been siphoning off funds through Vernon's shell accounts, fake names, ghost invoices, forged approval signatures. I brought everything back to Raymond that Monday. He reviewed it in silence, then said, "I'll have legal send a notice." "Not yet," I said. "Let me speak to him first." Raymond gave a small nod. "You have until the end of the week." I didn't call. I didn't email. I went in person. Harlan's house looked just the same: gray brick, patchy lawn, the basketball net still hanging loose from the garage. I parked at the curb and walked up the front steps. Daisy opened the door. She stared at me like she wasn't sure I was real. "What are you doing here?" "I need to speak with Harlan." She crossed her arms. "He's not home." I didn't move. "It's important." After a long pause, she stepped back. "He's in the garage." I found him hunched over a plastic bin, sorting tools. He didn't look up when I walked in. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "I know about the payments." He froze. "From Vernon," I said. "The fake contracts, the reimbursements, 10,000 a month for work you never did." He stood slowly, turned to face me. "That's not your business." It is now. You think you're somebody all of a sudden? Because Raymond gave you a title and a desk. You took money meant for the company. That's fraud. He stepped closer. You're going to ruin this family over a few invoices I gave you room in my home when you were starting out. I helped raise your children. And when you threw me out, I said nothing. But this isn't just about disrespect. This is theft. His jaw tightened. You're not going to report it. I already have. His eyes flashed. You've always thought you were better than us. No, I said. But I thought you were better than this. He didn't answer. I turned and walked out of the garage. Later that evening, I met with Raymond and the company's legal counsel. They drafted the notice. I gave them the file. We submitted the formal report to the board the next day. There would be an internal hearing. If Harlan didn't return the money, they'd pursue criminal charges. I went home that night and stood by the window watching the lights ripple across the water. I didn't feel triumph. I felt stillness, a kind of quiet that hadn't lived inside me in years. The next morning, I got a call from Daisy. You made your point, she said. Just please, don't let the kids find out. Then talk to Harlan. He won't listen to me. I can't help you anymore, Daisy. She was quiet for a long time, then hung up without another word. The silence in my apartment wasn't empty. It was whole. And the next day, when I returned to the office, Raymond was waiting with a new file in hand. You should see this, he said. It's time we talk about what comes next. The file Raymond handed me that morning was slim, just a single proposal clipped neatly at the top. But it carried more weight than I expected. It wasn't about Harlan. It was a transition outline. The board wants you to take over full operations, he said. I've told them you're ready. I read through it carefully, flipping each page as if it might disappear the second I blinked. I'd been working every day for months, long nights, early starts, dozens of decisions that shaped the direction of the company. But this was different. This was permanent. I looked up. Are you sure I was sure the day you walked into my office and reorganized a year's worth of mismanaged ledgers in a weekend? He said. You've kept this company standing, Carolyn. I nodded once. Then I'll take it. The formal announcement came that Thursday. It was short, direct, just a memo sent to the full company staff, letting them know that effective immediately, I'd be serving as interim CEO of Pierce Construction, reporting directly to the board until the next election. My name was typed at the bottom in bold. I read it 3 times before I folded the letter into my bag. I didn't tell anyone in my family, not yet. That weekend, I drove out to the edge of town, where new housing was going up along the bluff. I walked the perimeter of one of the lots with Marcus, the same broker who'd found me the apartment. You sure about this? He asked. I want the north-facing corner, I said, with the wraparound porch. He grinned. We'll make it happen. The construction wouldn't be finished for 6 months, but I wasn't in a hurry. I wanted to build something from the ground-up walls that held no memory, a kitchen with no ghost of silence in it. Back at the office, the fallout from Harlan's hearing began to ripple through the company. Vernon was quietly removed from his position. The board approved sanctions. Legal began proceedings to recover what was left of the funds. I kept my distance from it, reviewing the reports only when required. I didn't ask for updates on Harlan's response, and no one offered them. 3 days later, my office phone rang. It was the front desk. There's a young man here to see you, the receptionist said. He says his name is Elliot. My grandson. Send him up, I said. When the elevator doors opened, he stepped out in sneakers and a windbreaker, his hair tousled and face pale. He looked smaller than I remembered. He stood just inside the doorway, holding a crumpled envelope. My dad said you ruined his life, he said. I motioned to the chair across from me. Sit down. He didn't move at first, then slowly crossed the room and sat. Is he in jail? He asked. Not yet. Will he be? That's not my decision to make anymore. He looked down at the envelope in his hand. He's been drinking a lot. Mom cries in the bathroom. I'm sorry, Elliot. They say you don't care about us anymore. I let that hang in the air for a moment, then said, Do you believe that? He didn't answer. After a minute, he set the envelope on the desk and stood. This was for Christmas. I forgot to give it to you. I picked it up. The paper was soft edges bent. Inside was a card with a snowman on the front and to Grandma written in red pen. I opened it, read the single sentence, I miss our pancakes. When I looked up again, Elliot was already walking toward the elevator. I called after him. You can come by if you want. My new place has a waffle iron. He didn't turn around, but he didn't say no either. That night, I took the card home and placed it on the mantel in my apartment. I didn't know what would come next between us, but I knew where it had to begin. The next morning, I had coffee with Raymond in the courtyard outside the building. He looked tired again, but in a different way, now less worn, more at peace. I've drafted my resignation, he said. I stirred my coffee slowly. I'll keep things steady. I know you will. He left the next week. I took his office, but I didn't change much. I kept the books where they were. I kept the blinds. I added one thing, a framed photograph of the river taken from my apartment window. Morning light. Just enough reflection to see the clouds. At the next board meeting, they asked if I'd accept the permanent role. I said yes. Afterward, I walked through the building and nodded to the staff who had watched me come and go in silence all those months. Now they stopped me in the hall, asked questions, shared updates. The work was harder now, but it felt clearer. That Sunday, Sybil flew in from Chicago. I picked her up from the airport and drove her straight to the empty lot on the bluff. We stood there in the wind, looking out over the field. This is yours? She asked. It will be. She glanced at the binder I held in my arms, the architectural drawings, paint samples, kitchen layouts. You picked the tile already. I smiled. I had a little time. We went back to my apartment, and I made her tea. She stood in the kitchen, turning in a slow circle, looking at everything. You seem lighter, she said. I poured the tea and handed her a cup. I am. And as she sat down, I could already picture the new house, warm light in the windows, the sound of footsteps on the porch, the scent of dinner in the air. It was still months away. But it was real now. By mid-spring, the legal proceedings against Harlan were public. The board released a statement outlining the fraud investigation and Vernon's removal. Harlan had 30 days to repay the stolen funds or face charges. Local papers picked it up. His name was printed beneath bold headlines about corporate theft and family betrayal. His photograph, one I remembered from a company holiday party years ago, was used in nearly every article. I read them once, then folded the paper and slid it into the drawer beside my bed. That same week, I was invited to speak at a regional leadership conference. The invite came through one of our investors, a woman named Carla Hastings, who'd followed the company's recovery closely. She called personally. You've taken Pierce Construction through a storm, she said. People want to hear how you did it. The conference was held in Nashville. I flew in the day before, stayed at the hotel where the event was hosted, and walked through my notes in the quiet of the lounge that evening. The next morning, I stood in front of a packed ballroom with my name projected on a screen behind me. I wore a navy jacket and low heels. The microphone caught every word, but I didn't stumble. When it was over, Carla approached me at the side of the stage. "You've got a quiet strength," she said. "We need more of that." She introduced me to 3 other CEOs. One of them asked if I'd consider joining an advisory panel. Another asked if I'd be open to mentoring younger women in construction finance. I took every card they offered. Back home, the shift was noticeable. At the grocery store, someone tapped my shoulder in the produce aisle. "You're Carolyn, right?" the woman asked. "The one who took over Pierce?" I nodded. "My husband worked there under the last CFO. He says things are better now." I thanked her. We talked about pears and rainfall. The following Sunday, my phone rang just after 6 in the evening. I recognized the number Daisy's landline. I let it ring once more, then answered. "Hi," she said. "We're having a cookout next weekend. Just burgers, nothing fancy. The kids wanted to invite you." I paused. "Did they?" She hesitated. "Elliot did." "I'll think about it. There'll be pie," she said, then quickly added apple. "Like you used to make?" I didn't respond. After a moment, she said goodbye and hung up. That Thursday, I drove past their house on my way home from the office. The front lawn had been freshly mowed. A folding table was set up in the driveway covered in a plastic gingham cloth. 2 coolers sat beneath it. I didn't stop. Instead, I went home and called Sybil. "They're reaching out," I said. She waited. "Do I go? Do you want to?" "I don't know." There was a long silence on the line. Then she said, "You don't owe them an answer today." The next day, I received a letter at the office. Handwritten. No return address. I recognized the blocky script. It was Harlan's. Inside was a folded sheet of lined paper. He'd written only one sentence. "I didn't think you'd actually do it." I slid the paper back into the envelope and placed it in the bottom drawer of my desk beneath the audit reports. Then I locked the drawer. Later that evening, I received a text from Elliot. "Grandma." I made the waffles. Attached was a photo of a plate, 2 misshapen waffles dusted with powdered sugar maple syrup pooled at the edges. I replied, "Next time, try folding in the butter before the eggs." The typing dots blinked for a few seconds. Then, "You always say that." I smiled. That weekend, I didn't go to the cookout. Instead, I met Sybil at the lot where my house would soon rise. We brought coffee and folding chairs and sat looking out over the river. The foundation had been poured. You could see where the walls would stand. Sybil looked around. "You'll host the holidays here someday. I'll need a longer table." She sipped her coffee. "You'll fill it." The next morning, I walked into the office to find a bouquet on my desk. Yellow tulips, no card. I left them in the window where the sun hit just right around 10 each morning. The following week, the board finalized the financial recovery. A portion of Harlan's seized assets would be returned to the company. The rest would be handled through civil court. I didn't attend the hearing. My presence wasn't required. A week later, Sybil forwarded me an article from the local business journal. The headline read, "Pierce CEO turns company around after internal collapse." There was a photograph of me at the conference mid-sentence, one hand raised slightly. The article was clipped to our office bulletin board by Monday. That afternoon, I received a package. No return address. Inside was a small ceramic dish, hand-painted in deep blue with white trim. Beneath it a note, "For your new kitchen. I'm proud of you. E." I placed the dish on the bookshelf next to the river photo. And then I sat in my chair listening to the soft tick of the clock and the muted sound of the city just beyond the glass. The siding was up, pale gray with white trim, just like I'd imagined it. By the time we pulled into the gravel driveway, the crew was already finishing the front porch columns. I stepped out of the car boots crunching in the gravel and just stood there. It looked exactly like the drawing tacked to my fridge 5 months ago, only now it was real. Sybil walked up beside me. Still want the porch swing on the left? I nodded, facing the river. Inside, the drywall was done, and the hardwood floors were being stained. I walked through slowly, touching the walls, picturing furniture that hadn't been bought yet. In the kitchen, a single pendant light hung from the ceiling unlit. The air smelled like sawdust and polyurethane. When I opened the back door, the wind lifted my hair soft and cool and carried in the sound of water moving over stone. That night, I got a text from Daisy. "Family dinner this Saturday. Your housewarming." I stared at it for a long time. My housewarming. Then another message followed. "Elliot's making the playlist. He asked if you liked old stuff. He's got Sinatra and something called The Eagles on there." There was no question mark, just a statement like it was already decided. I didn't respond. Saturday came. I spent the morning at the site again. The porch swing had been delivered, and the painters were finishing the baseboards. I brought lemon scones for the crew and stayed until the last brushstroke dried near the laundry room door. By the time I got home, there were 5 missed calls and 1 voicemail from Daisy. I listened to it while sitting on the edge of my bed. "We're already at the house. Brought folding chairs and your favorite pie. You can be mad at me all you want, Carolyn, but these kids deserve to know their family." I didn't drive over. Instead, I went to Sybil's. We made chili and cornbread and sat on her porch while the sun went down. She didn't ask questions. That night, just before 10, I got another message. This time from Elliot. "Everyone's gone now. I saved you a slice." The next morning, I stopped by the lot before heading into the office. I found paper cups in the trash can outside and a few crushed soda cans in the grass. Someone had used sidewalk chalk on the driveway block letters in blue and green. "Welcome home." It was smudged at the edges from rain or shoes. In the office, my assistant handed me a letter that had been delivered by hand. No envelope, just a folded sheet of stationery with Pierce Construction printed at the top. The handwriting was tight and slanted. "If you think this house makes you better than us, you're wrong." It wasn't signed, but I didn't need it to be. That Friday, I got a call from our legal team. One of Harlan's old contacts had requested an in-person meeting, someone from the city's Financial Oversight Committee. They suspected additional accounts had been used to hide payments, some of which may have been linked to family members. I drove to the meeting myself. It was held in a small conference room downtown. The man I met with wore wire-rimmed glasses and had a yellow legal pad open in front of him. He asked about specific wire transfers, amounts, dates, signatures. I answered what I could. At the end, he slid a photograph across the table. It showed a group gathered in front of a beach house, Daisy, her husband Harlan, and a few cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. In the background, a banner read, "Pierce Founders Retreat." The date stamp in the corner was from the year the funds first started vanishing. "They claimed it as a business expense," he said. I nodded slowly. It wasn't. When I got home that night, I found a small box on my porch. No label, just twine tied in a bow. Inside was a single photo, me standing on the porch of the new house, holding a tape measure, smiling. Underneath it was a note. "You look happy. That's new." I put it back in the box, closed the lid, and slid it onto the shelf in the front closet. That Sunday, I finally returned Elliot's message. I texted, "The Eagles are fine, but add Billie Holiday." He responded in less than a minute. "Got it. Do you like Blue Moon?" I replied, "Yes." 2 hours later, he sent a voice message. It was just him humming part of the tune, then laughing because he missed the last note. And for the first time, in a very long time, I laughed too. The swing was finally up. It creaked gently when I sat down the old oak behind the house, casting long shadows across the porch. I had a glass of sweet tea in one hand and the invitation in the other. Heavy cardstock, raised lettering, the kind Daisy liked. It read, Carolyn's housewarming, family food, and forgiveness. But the part that stood out most was the address. My address. And underneath it, one short sentence, please come if you can. I folded it and tucked it back into the envelope. There was no RSVP list, no playlist curated by Elliot, no demands, no ultimatums, no guilt folded into the corners, just an open invitation. I'd sent out 6 of them, 1 to Daisy, 1 to Elliot, and 4 to others who hadn't spoken my name in years. I didn't expect most of them to show, but that wasn't the point. Around 4 o'clock, I brought out the lemon scones and brewed coffee strong enough to warm your hands just holding the mug. Sybil arrived first, wearing a soft blue cardigan and carrying a pie wrapped in foil. She kissed my cheek and said nothing. Just walked into the kitchen and started slicing. By 5, 2 of the construction crew showed up. They'd helped build the back deck. I didn't know them well, but they hugged me like old friends. One brought his daughter. She drew chalk hearts on the driveway next to the faded letters from last week. The breeze picked up. Someone turned on Billie Holiday. Blue Moon drifted through the screen door. And then a car pulled in. Elliot stepped out holding a small box. He looked unsure, but his eyes scanned the porch until they found me. I stood and walked to the steps, heart steady. "Can I come in?" he asked. I nodded. "Of course." He handed me the box. Inside was an old photo us as kids on Grandpa Pierce's porch, covered in flour from a pie-making contest. A slip of paper was tucked beneath it. Just one line written in his handwriting. "I want to start over, if you'll let me." I looked up at him, and for the first time, I didn't feel the weight of the past pulling on my ribs. I just felt the breeze and the swing and the sound of people inside a house I'd built with my own hands. He stepped onto the porch and joined the others. Later, I found him helping Sybil with the dishes, laughing at something she said. Daisy never came. I thought I'd be sad about that, but as I stood under the porch light watching Elliot hand a cup of coffee to the man who'd stained the floors, I realized something. Forgiveness doesn't always mean going back. Sometimes it means moving forward without dragging the wound behind you. I stayed on the porch until the sky turned deep indigo and the stars began to show. I thought about the letters, the fights, the years I spent trying to be welcome in rooms that were never built for me. And I thought about this house, quiet, solid, filled with breath and music, and people who came because they wanted to, not because they were expected to. That night, I wrote myself a letter. It wasn't long, just a few lines to fold up and place in the top drawer beside the blueprints. It said, "You kept going. You built the life they said you didn't deserve, and you opened the door anyway. If you've ever had to rebuild from scratch, brick by brick, breath by breath, just know this, you're allowed to build something they can't tear down." Thanks for listening. If this story stayed with you, I'd love to know where you're listening from. And if you've ever made a home from the ashes of something broken, you're not alone.